So friends, today we are going to talk about patient safety. As I said earlier, patient safety is one of the most important aspect of patient care, or lack of patient safety is most important concern facing healthcare today. Now, what is this patient safety about? Is what we are going to talk today. Okay, I may exceed a little bit more than an hour or so. It's supposed to be 1 hour. So before going ahead with what is patient safety and what is our concern, I would be showing you a video. I hope you like the video. What a meaningful video it is, right? Maybe it's time for your teachers to give you a push you out of the colleges, and until and unless you discover your wings, you won't be able to fly, right? Well, when we talk about patient safety, I would like you to draw your attention onto a very, very important fact of life of a healthcare worker. We, the healthcare workers, are caught between two paradoxes or opposite forces working on our minds, on our brains. One side, we healthcare workers do not want to cause any harm to our patients. We sincerely do not want to cause any harm to our patients, right? But on the other hand, we being the human beings, we tend to commit errors. To err is human. So the very fact that we are human beings and healthcare is such an industry where so many people work, it is we call it a human intense industry, which means that we need to have people in healthcare working. We can't ever replace our work, what we do with robots or any other machines. Though there are a lot of robots and machines available, but it does not alter the role what healthcare workers play in healthcare. So to err is human on one side, hence we make mistakes. We do make mistakes while caring for patients, unfortunately. And why do we make mistakes? Only one answer is that we are humans and we do make mistakes. So this fact we have to accept, that we are humans and hence we make mistakes. But at the same time, we won't want to do any harm to any of our patients. So be aware that we are humans and there is a probability of committing an error, making an error while caring for patients. So this is the first thing which we got to understand, that while providing healthcare to patients, things can go wrong, we can commit mistakes. It is not only we can commit mistakes, anyone involved in healthcare can commit a mistake. Anyone, no one is spared, because all of us are human beings. Okay, so this is something which we have to understand. I'm just trying to explain you the concepts. This is a quote from Florence Nightingale. I don't know whether you have come across this. The very first requirement of a hospital is that it should do the sick no harm. This is what Florence Nightingale said years ago. And the other gentleman on the screen is Dr. Ernest Coleman. He lived in early part of last century, and he was one proponent of the fact that healthcare workers, the doctors and nurses maybe are prone to commit mistakes, and we should, he was of the opinion that we should acknowledge it and we should work on it. We should work on our mistakes. Usual tendency is that we try to put it under the carpet, hide it, so that no one else will come to know about it. But what is the danger of that? If we do that, the chances of committing the same error still persists in the same way. It doesn't change. But whereas if we have the guts to talk about it, or the protocol to reveal it and take measures to prevent the circumstances under which the errors happened, then there is a hope that it might come down. Okay, so that is what Ernest Coleman said. But though he said that no one of his colleagues accepted that, and he was subjected to scrutiny and problems, and he was put in a mental asylum later, and he had a premature death because of the stresses caused by his own theories. But much later, we are a century later now, we have realized that what he said was right. You might have come across this word, quality and safety in healthcare. If you are a patient, or if you have to take one of your near and dear one to a hospital, you will choose a healthcare or a hospital which has quality as well as safety there. Okay, so what is the difference between quality and safety? These are some basic concepts which every healthcare worker should know, and hence I am talking about all this. So safety simply means freedom from harm. That is safety, freedom from harm, which means that there is freedom, or the patient is free from healthcare induced and preventable complications. A lot of complications what a patient faces is induced by the way we provide healthcare. And whereas quality means meeting the expectations of the client or the patient, meeting their expectations. Of course, they do not expect to have any complication acquired from the hospital. So that is a given factor that safety must be there in the hospital. But quality varies from hospital to hospital, which means that in some hospitals there is prompt response, or someone will come and receive you when you go to the hospital, things like that. Some more examples are there on the screen. You can read that. I'm sorry. This is a slide from World Health Organization. This talks about quality in healthcare is safe care. So quality care is safe care, no doubt. And they talk also about effective healthcare. So probably quality in healthcare talks about effectiveness in various ways, meeting the client expectations. So a good hospital has both, that it meets your expectations and it also is safe. Now we have seen that what is safety in healthcare? That safety is freedom from preventable harm. If something we can prevent it, and if the patient gets it, that is where we have to work on. So patient safety in simple words means that we do all that is possible to prevent doing any harm to the patient. So it is an organizational priority. It is an organizational commitment. So organizational commitment means it's the commitment of the management, it's commitment of everybody who works in the hospital. So what do you have to do to ensure the patients are safe, which means that none of them get any harm while being in the hospital, while undergoing treatment, which are preventable. So what do we have to do for that? Do the right things always. So there is no one fine day to do right things. We have to do the right things all the time, and thereby reducing the risk of harm while we provide healthcare. And not only that, this doing the right things all the time optimize good outcomes. Now here, what is good outcome? Good clinical outcome. I hope you understand what is outcome. Outcome means the end result of care. So this has to be done by each and everyone in the hospital. So doing the right things all the time has to be done by everybody in healthcare, everyone working in the healthcare. So my purpose of talking to you about quality and patient safety in healthcare is to learn what is right. Then only you can do right things, right? So right from the beginning, if you learn the right things and do the right things, the patients would be much more safer in your hands than if you don't do that. Now, while talking about the patient safety or freedom from harm from preventable errors and complications, we should understand a theory. I'm sure all of you have learned nursing management in your 4th year, and you have learned something known as Donabedian theory. I don't know whether all of you have come across that, or maybe you can Google it. Donabedian is a management thinker, and he has proposed a theory which is very much applicable in any setting, and not only in hospitals, where he said that the output here is good clinical outcome, that patients go happily from here after their treatment. So they had received the desired goals, or they have achieved the desired goals, and they have gone on discharge. So that is good clinical outcome means. So the good clinical outcome is the end result of the care what we provide, and this good clinical outcome is the end result of the interplay between the input and processes. Now, input is the facilities we have, the building we have, the people we have, the way we select people and we choose people for employment and we give training, and all that is input is from external outside. The machines we have, the diagnostic measures we follow, or the equipment we have, all that is input. Okay. So the people, the structure is what is input is, and processes is how do we go about doing things in the hospital in order to provide patient care. That is processes. So what you're going to learn here is the various processes. So processes by definition is steps or procedures which different categories of people will do in order to achieve a common outcome. Okay, so that is the definition of processes. So the input and processes and the interplay between these two decide the outcome, or the end result. So that is what is non-Abelian theory all about. Input process output theory is otherwise it is known as. Now, why do we talk about non-Abelian here? Is to understand that the adverse events are not because people are negligent or incompetent. It is not. Most of the cases not. Okay. Most of the cases, the adverse events, the undesirable events happen because of the way we design the systems. So this theory is known as systems theory. So system is the entire structure and the way we go about doing things. So all that together is known as system. Okay, so system, don't get confused. System, we also call our computer system, or anything to do with the computers or internet, we call it system. So here the system means the way we work using the structure and the way we have designed different steps of achieving something, a common goal, altogether is known as systems. So what the systems theory says is, or from the system theory, what we understand is that the adverse events happen, most of it happen because of the underlying flaws in the systems, or flaw is a mistake, or flaw is imperfectness. So if we have a perfect system, everything will go fine. I can give you examples of perfect systems as well. We'll come to that in the next slides. So hospital or healthcare is not a very perfect system. So perfect system means everything will go as we have calculated. Okay, machine precision. Then you can say it's a perfect system. Unfortunately, in hospitals, since we have too many human interfaces, too many people working, too many interactions, too many activities, which is all done by human hands and human brain. Hence, our systems tend to have so many inborn flaws or imperfections in that. And this is what is causing these adverse events. But that is not an escapism, okay? So if it is because of the imperfections in the way we function, or it is because of the flaws in the systems, what is our responsibility? Our responsibility is to look into the systems. When each time when something goes wrong, we should look into the system. Is your machine all right? Is your SOP, standard operating procedure, all right? Is there any steps being bypassed? You have to look into 1,000 things to find out why did something go wrong. Each case you have to do that and correct all those system flaws to make it a near perfect system. and then your adverse events will come down, and thereby we will enhance patient safety. So in other words, patient safety means what is your chance of coming out of a hospital without acquiring something from there? You went with a problem, you went there as a patient with a disease condition, and are you getting more diseases from the hospital? Or you had a limitation because of a disease condition, you went to the hospital to find a remedy to that. So are you returning home with more limitations? Okay, if not, you can say that that's a safe hospital. Or in other words, patient safety means your probability of acquiring a preventable harm as a patient when you go to the hospital. Okay, so I'll tell you another example of patient safety before going into the next slide. To make things little more clear to you, all of you travel on the road, right? All of us, every one of us travel on the road. Some of us use public transport, some of us use our private transport. Okay. So I do drive. I do drive to go home, or I do as part of my employment, probably. I work in different places and you have to travel a lot. So road safety is a serious concern in our state, right? We hear every day there is road accidents, and a lot of people are dying out of it on the road. You open the newspaper, there isn't a day where you don't hear about a major accident. Every day we hear it. So road safety is something which all of you have learned. Many of you may be having driving licenses. We teach the traffic rules to everyone. There are traffic rules, so that is standard operating procedures. It is enforced onto the public. And if you have to drive a vehicle, you need a valid license. And you will not just like that get a license. There is a process to it. The one who is providing the license, the traffic police commissioner, ensures that you know the road safety rules, you know the protocols, and you know how to follow it. You have the skill to drive. You can understand the traffic signals and behave accordingly. All these things they will ensure. And also you have to undergo some classes on safe driving, where they say that, you should not drink and drive, you should not drive under the effects of alcohol, you must ensure that you have slept enough before you sit behind driving wheel, etc., etc. A lot of things. Okay, so if everybody ensures this, basically when you ensure all these things, you are a disciplined person. There are rules and regulations, there are protocols to be followed, and when you follow that, you are safe on the road. Now here on the road, while you drive the vehicle, it is not necessary that you have not followed a rule. You might be perfect in following the road safety rules, but you are safe if only everyone driving on the road is following it the same way, right? In our case, we do not have that. Everyone doesn't follow. So are you safe enough if you only follow that? No, everyone will have to follow it, because otherwise someone can come and hit you, even if you are driving perfectly. So patient safety is something similar to road safety, where all the accidents do not happen because people are indisciplined. The design of the road matters. The climate matters. If it is raining too much, you can't see it. Sometimes you drive through muddle of water, then you may get into a problem. So there are 1000 conditions which will determine whether you will have an accident, or maybe your vehicle may not be all right. So there might be something about the safety of the vehicle itself. So there are so many factors which decides whether an accident should happen. But all these factors we will identify on hindsight. When something has gone wrong, then we will investigate the matter and find out as to what went wrong in each of the cases, right? So a similar situation exists in the hospital. We have to proactively design all these things, and we also have to share the learning from others' bad experience. Because if we learn only from bad experience what we face, then probably one life is not enough, right? So we have to learn from others' bad experience. So every bad experience or every adverse event happening in the hospital has lessons to learn from. And if you hide any of these things, we are missing out on two things. One is the chance of correcting the circumstances under which the error happened, and two, the valuable lesson people would learn from sharing that experience. So when you choose to keep quiet or hide an event, this is what happens. So what? Another life is at stake, or many more life is at stake, because if we prevent ourselves from becoming more safer day by day, we are placing lives under jeopardy. I hope you are getting my point. So why worry about patient safety was the question on the screen. So why should we worry about patient safety? It is because of the high probability, or probability is chance. How much percentage of chance? Now this is not a guesswork. This is, probability is a mathematical word. You can calculate it. Okay. Probability, I don't know whether you have learned in mathematics. There is science behind calculating the probability of something happening, anything for that matter. Like, say, for example, what is the probability of a child being born as a female or a male? What is the probability? Anybody? Anyone? You can unmute and say, though I can't see you, but
1/2.
1 by
50%, right? 50%. Why do you say so? That's correct, 50%. Why do you say so?
there is equal chance of being a girl and a boy.
Yes. Why do you say so, I asked? Because it is the male chromosome which decides whether the child should be a female or male, XY, right? And whether it X and Y, it is 50% chance that someone may get X, someone may get Y. Okay, that's why we say it is 50%. Okay, so this is mathematics. Okay, there is science behind it. So probability is a mathematical aspect, which is a science. So probability of an error is what we are talking about in the screen. So these are some statistics. Okay, so remember earlier I said about perfect systems. Perfect systems where errors do happen very seldom. One example is airline industry. In the airline industry, though we might have heard of accidents, flight accidents, but we don't hear it every day, right? And millions of flights are happening right now. Our sky is full of flights all the time across the world. Imagine that. But we don't hear about a flight accident every day. We don't hear, right? As in comparison with the road accidents. So airline industry is a near perfect industry where it is not by chance, by the way. We don't hear about flight accidents every other day. Is not by chance. It is because the industry is designed that way. There is a lot of human brains working behind it, the way things are, or it is designed in such a way that it is much safer. Another example is nuclear power industry. Nuclear power. Okay, so a lot of electricity in this world is generated by nuclear power plants, and we don't hear much of accidents every other day. Yeah, occasionally we do hear. You might have heard of Chernobyl accident and all that, right? So that is one in a century. We don't hear it much often. So these are two examples of near perfect systems where the safety is not just by accident, but it is by careful planning and implementation and constant checking of their own processes and protocols. They are at it always. And they ensure that everyone follows their protocols. It is designed that way, you cannot escape it. And hence there is relatively much higher safety there. So, if you have to travel by a flight, you don't have to think twice whether it is safe. But if you have to get into road transport, you may think about it. Though this doesn't come into our mind, right? When you get onto the road, every day probably you are traveling. But do you think about accidents? You don't. You seldom think about it. Unless it happens, you don't. And in a day, while having a long drive, the number of vehicles entering into accidents, I can't just tell you. But it is just flashing of a second, the next moment you're forgetting about it. And hence, the same risk on the road continues to remain there. But as against, say, domestic flights or accidents in nuclear power plants, the risk of dying as a result of a medical error is much, much, much higher, as in comparison with the risk of, or the possibility or probability of dying from an airline accident. I hope you are with me. So death in hospitals from medical errors, mistakes, what we do while providing care. These are American statistics, 1 in 343 admissions to 1 in 764 admissions. 343 admission we have in once in 3 days or so. We have about 150 plus admissions every day. Okay, so this is an American statistics where people are much more tolerant and they have systems to report, and they have a national system of reporting errors. So if this is the statistics, think of our place, we don't have any of these things in our country. Very minuscule. Okay, so how many of our patients will be dying from mistakes we do? Mistakes. And adverse events, which means that things can go wrong, some error can happen. It is not necessary that every time patient may be harmed, not really. So they are adverse events, and on the one side of the spectrum, the extreme end is an error which caused catastrophe, where a patient's life is involved or adversely affected and a patient is either dead. On the other side is adverse event which did not matter to anyone. I don't know whether I should bog you down with statistics anymore. Okay, so this is about the history. So patient safety as a concern was raised not so long ago, 2000. Around the time many of you were born, right? So it was raised in a report. IOM is Institute of Medicine. This is a non-profit organization in the United States. So the federal government in the United States have asked this Institute of Medicine to study how many patients die in American hospitals because of preventable errors. And they have published that study in the year 2000. The report name is "To Err is Human," is the report title. If you Google, you will get this report. It's a huge report, but it's in the public space. IOM report 2000, "To Err is Human." If you Google, you will get it. Downloadable document. I don't know whether you should read it, but if you're interested, you can. And what was astounding finding in that report was that the fact that 44,000 to 98,000 annual deaths happen in US hospitals because of preventable errors. This was the most glaring finding in that report. And when this report was published, it caused a lot of discussions, public outrage, and people could not accept it, hospitals could not accept it, because no one ever studied before that. We knew that, yeah, there may be mistakes happening and some old case may be dying, but the gravity of the situation or the numbers are so high, nobody knew unless somebody studied it and published it. And what is found was that most of these deaths, 44,000 to 98,000. Now, why there is or more than double, the range is because some of the hospitals or some of the regions it was less. In some areas or some hospitals it was much more higher. So they gave a range, okay, because they studied a few years together. And most of these were medication related and surgical errors related. Okay. And they also said that more Americans die from medical errors each year than from breast cancer, AIDS, or car accidents put together in the United States. These are mind-boggling statistics, correct? So what is this impact of these errors? Okay, these are just statistics for you from different countries. These are not Indian statistics. 2% of the hospital admissions has adverse drug events, resulting in increased length of stay. LOS is length of stay. How long? Now, if you have a complication or if you have an adverse event, you may have to extend your stay in the hospital. You may have to take additional treatment. It costs you more. And does the hospital get profit? No, it loses. The hospital's business gets badly affected by increasing number of medical errors, serious medical errors. Now coming to what are these errors or how do we classify them and how do we develop some understanding into this? Like how you studied human body, all of you studied anatomy, right? Now when you studied anatomy, you had different organ systems. Now, why do we study human body under the heading of different organ systems? Because human body is very complex to study and we should have some compartmentalization and classification based on location of the structure and or function so that it is easy to understand. So you're trying to study a very complex phenomena by dividing into and giving it a structure. Okay, maybe you might have studied Gray's anatomy. So Dr. Gray was a person who gave some form and structure to this anatomy. So it is not that, it is compartmentalized or it is as we understand it, but to develop an understanding and concept about how human body works, that is essential. So as complex is this science of patient safety. So to understand it, we have given some classification. I mean, it's not as complex as human structure, but the way it happens or the way we understand it or the way we experience it, we have divided into different classifications. Okay. So one is out of the outcome of this adverse event. Okay, depending on the outcome of adverse event. Something has gone wrong, did the patient get affected? Okay, so that is the criteria used here. So variance is an event or circumstance not consistent with the standard routine practice of the hospital. So we have standard operating procedures for everything, anything what you have to do in the hospital. And if any variation happens in that process, it did not happen the expected way, you call it variance. Otherwise, you call it in our hospital, we call it incident. Okay, so incident is actually adverse incident. Okay, though adverse word, we don't use it for common usage every day. So incidents or adverse incidents is the correct word, or adverse event also you can call it, is the same as variance. Okay, so variance is an event where something did not happen as per the standard operating procedure. Okay, so that is variance. Say an example is somebody, here for attendance, we have this biometric punching. So my shift starts at 9 o'clock. One day I came at 9:10. Another day I came at 9:15. One day I came at 8:30. Yeah, this is variance. If I punch every day at 9 o'clock, it is as per the protocol. But if there is a variance, if there is a change, that is variance. Understood? Any change from the standard operating procedure. Does it make it an error? Not really so. Not really so. But what if I come late half an hour every day? Then it's a problem, correct? Then it's a problem. It has to be monitored. It has to be checked. It becomes indiscipline. Indiscipline is a more serious problem than adverse event. Okay, next comes error. Error, in other words, is a mistake. Error is a mistake. Now, by definition, it is an unintended act. Means you did not mean to do. You did not mean the outcome. You did not intend to have the outcome of something which you did. So error is an unintended act, either of omission or commission. I'll explain what it is. Or an act that does not achieve its intended outcome. So omission or commission is, these are legal words, okay? Omission and commission is a legal word. So what is omission? Omission is not doing something which you were expected to do. And commission is doing something which you were not expected to do. Okay, both are incorrect. Both are errors. And you did something which did not achieve its intended outcome. That is also an error. I mean, as per the definition. Now, most of these events are no harm events, which means it does not harm anyone, neither the patient nor the staff nor anyone else within the premises. Okay, so most of these adverse events does not enter into the zone where it harms people. Okay. Now we have another area where somebody is harmed, the patient. It could be anyone else also, patient, attendant, staff, anybody, anyone who is in the hospital premises. So they are harmful adverse events. Now, whether it is harmful or not, we will know after the event, right? Whether it has affected somebody or not. So before the event happening, we will not know. Or next time when it happens, we have no guarantee that it does not harm people. Okay, hence all adverse events are important for us. Now, on one side, one end of the spectrum of this adverse events is variance, where something did not happen as per the SOP, but nothing went wrong, or no one was adversely affected, or maybe that event itself did not happen. Can happen that with. And on the other hand, the other extreme of this spectrum is where something we call as sentinel event. Sentinel event in the hospital means an unexpected occurrence involving death or serious physical or psychological injury, or the risk thereof to a patient, or the risk thereof. Why do we say it? This again a little bit legal language coming, which means that a serious harm may not be evident in the first place. Okay, it may be later. So even if because something went wrong and a harm is happening later, or it is manifested, or it is experienced later, because of that, if there is a causative relationship, because of an event this happened, then it is again a sentinel event. That is why or the risk thereof means that. Okay. Now this could be to a patient, this could be to a visitor, or it could be to an employee. Okay. I hope you understood. Because of an adverse event, someone's life is seriously impacted in terms of either serious physical injury or psychological injury or death involving a patient, a visitor, or a staff is known as sentinel. Okay, I hope I made it myself clear. So in an adverse event, when something goes wrong, if a patient's life is adversely affected, we call it a sentinel event. In some literature, it is also known as never event. Never event means it is an event which should have never happened in the hospital. Now we have another category of these events, which is almost similar as that of a sentinel event, but the only difference is here a patient or an individual is not harmed. Then we call it near miss. And it was just about to happen, but something prevented it. It is also important to ask, okay, equal as sentinel event, not in terms of outcome, but in terms of our preventive action. So near miss means any process variation which did not affect the outcome, but for which a recurrence carries a significant chance of a serious adverse outcome. So which in other words means you don't have to by heart all these things, but just understand what is meant by this. So near miss means we would have had a catastrophe, but because of somebody's last minute intervention or by sheer luck, it was prevented. But why is it important? The patient was not affected or a staff was not affected. But why is it important? Because if we don't do anything about it, there exists the same probability of it getting repeated. And that time we cannot guarantee that sentinel event will not happen. Hence, we should give the same importance while tackling such an event in terms of preventive action. Okay, all this is dealt with in two ways. One is doing corrective action. If something has gone wrong, we do something to reduce the impact of that. That is corrective action. And the other side of it is to do preventive action, which means that we do something so that this will not happen again. So both together we call it corrective and preventive action. It is not one, it is two different sets of activities. And in short form, we call it CAPA, C-A-P-A, corrective action and preventive action. Okay. I hope so far is clear. Any doubts anybody has so far? Or maybe you can note down your doubts at the end of it. I will clarify. That also would be okay. I can only see the slides on my screen. I can't see any one of you much because that would be blocking the slide. So I have minimized it. So I'm not able to see anybody, but I hope there is no disturbance. All right. So let's understand what is adverse event. Or this is something which you must have on your mind. Okay, sorry. So we do come across or the events which are sentinel events or where death or serious harm happened to the patient. All of us come to know about it because you can't hide it anymore because somebody's life is affected. Hence, most of it we come to know. I wouldn't claim everything we come to know, not really. So that is the tip of the iceberg. Where things would go wrong is the tip of the iceberg. Now, what is underwater is the whole lot of adverse events, which ranges from no harm events to near miss events. Even near miss event, you will not come to know unless it is reported. If we are very diligent in reporting, all these events are supposed to be reported. There is a structure of reporting. We do have a standard operating procedure and a process to follow when something goes wrong. Every employee is bound to do that. I mean, reporting is the responsibility of the employee. So we may have, besides what is so visible outside, which is sentinel events, adverse events ranging from no harm events to near miss events. So near miss events simply means that the consequence was prevented due to somebody's last minute intervention. And maybe by luck, someone just happened to capture that in the right moment. Does it mean that the same thing will happen next time? If the same thing had to happen, no. It might end up in a sentinel where somebody would die, or somebody's life would be affected, somebody's quality of life would be affected. Now, mind you, we are talking about all these are preventable. The importance of talking about all this is, if all the healthcare workers are diligent enough, intelligent enough, knowledgeable enough, and serious enough in our delivery of healthcare, we can prevent it. Okay, that is the importance of talking about this today. Now let's see what are these sentinel events or never events. You must have an understanding of this. So I'm talking about it. So what are sentinel events? Some of the examples you would have already heard. Some you may not have. Okay, so we have different classification. So one bucket or one classification or one large part of it is related to surgery, surgical events. Okay, just read through it, what you see on the screen. Surgery performed on the wrong body part. You might have heard of this, at least when it happens, it becomes national headline, right? Instead of right knee, left knee was operated, or, right kidney had to be removed, whereas the left one was removed, or right eye cataract instead of that left eye cataract surgery was done. So on the wrong body part. So wrong side surgery, in other words, wrong side surgery. Now, wrong body part could also be, the total surgery itself was changed. Some other surgery was supposed to be done, but, the ones who was doing the surgery did not realize who the patient is. Surgery performed on the wrong patient. So in the first case, the patient was right, the surgery had to be undergone, but some wrong operation happened. Okay. And the patient itself would have been different. Wrong surgical procedure performed on a patient. Wrong surgery. Some other surgery, but another surgery was done on the patient. Where it is not indicated. What I mean is, unintended retention of a foreign object in a patient after surgery or other procedure. Which means not that somebody intentionally left something inside, unintended retention. So which means that, say, surgical gauze or an instrument which was left within the body, surgery is done, and inadvertently means by mistake something was left in the body. This is another example of a sentinel event. All these are sentinel events. Intraoperative or immediately postoperative death in a ASA class 1 patient. ASA classification is done to identify the anesthesia risk of the patient. Class 1, class 2, class 3. Class 3 is there is high mortality. We call it high risk patients. That the chances of death in a surgery is higher if you have serious comorbidities. So this is not that. This is intraoperative or immediate postoperative death in an unexpected case where it is a class 1 patient where there was no anesthesia risk. So that is a sentinel event. Okay, so these are surgery related sentinel events. Now we have second, broad classification is a product or device related events. We use a lot of products. So now product means it is medications, drugs, and device is something which we use a lot of devices on patients, right? So maybe a valve, maybe a prosthesis, or maybe some assistive devices what we surgically implant into the patient, like say for example a pacemaker. It is implanted into the patient's body. It's a mechanical thing, right? It's a machine. So there can be product or device related events where the patient have either died or suffered irreparable damage to the life. Okay, so product related could be the use of a contaminated drug in a device, or something which you have implanted was not right, or something like that. The quality is not there, or something like that. So these all are product related events. Now, a device which is implanted onto the patient for a purpose did not work. That is a product or a device related problem. Or patient death or serious disability associated with intravascular air embolism that occurs while being cared for in a healthcare facility. So intravascular air embolism is a sentinel event. An example of a sentinel, product related sentinel event. Patient protection events. Now there are another category of events which are known as patient protection events, where the safety of the patient is jeopardized. Like say for example, infant or a baby discharged to a wrong person, or baby missing. You might have heard it, whenever a baby goes missing from a hospital, it strikes the national headlines, right? Comes in the newspaper. It is always it's relayed live on our TV channels, right? So baby missing is or this discharged to a wrong person is a example of sentinel event. It can destroy the hospital actually. A patient death or serious disability associated with patient elopement, which means patient ran away from the hospital. So patient missing or absconding from a hospital is a serious event. And if the patient, while being in our inpatient strength, eloped or ran away, and the patient died or sustained serious disability in an accident or something, it's a sentinel event. Please understand, the patients who come to us, their life is our responsibility legally. Okay, we are the custodian of patient's life once they are in our premises. I'm not talking emotionally, okay? This is legal stand. So a patient who is admitted, that patient's life is our responsibility. We cannot say the patient we are not finding, or patient ran away from here. We can't really say that. But it does happen in the hospital. Patient do run away. So we have to put such a system in place where it prevents patients from running away from hospital. Okay. So if suppose all that failed and a patient ran away, we are supposed to report to the patient, report to the police station. We file a missing complaint, and we have a protocol to follow when it is discovered. But still it is a sentinel event. Okay. Patient suicide or attempted suicide resulting in serious disability while being cared for in a healthcare facility also is a sentinel event. There is possibility of patient suicide. Not only patients, anybody for that matter. Somebody has a suicidal tendency, it is up to them to choose where they should commit suicide, right? Last year I had, in the hospital where I was working, had an employee suicide in the hospital while on duty. This can happen. Okay, so it's advisable to have a suicide prevention program in the hospital. So these are examples of patient protection events. Now we have a fourth category of sentinel events, which are known as environmental events. So that is patient death or serious disability associated with an event in the hospital, which are environment related. Like say, for example, somebody sustained electric shock while being cared in a healthcare facility. We've heard this, yeah, or somebody who died in a fire in a hospital. Did you hear about it? COVID time, we have heard of a lot of hospital fires because of too much of oxygen handling in the hospital. We have heard it from many parts of our country. Any incident in which a line designated for oxygen or other gas to be delivered to a patient contains wrong gas or contaminated toxic substances. Imagine a condition where instead of oxygen, anesthetic gas is delivered to the patient. Wrong gas cylinder connection. If our safety protocols are breached, this all can happen. Burn incurred from any source while being cared for a healthcare facility. Serious burns patient sustains from any source while being in the hospital. Okay, you will learn about in detail about all these things. Fall while being cared for in a healthcare facility, which resulted in fracture or a head injury where patient's life is adversely affected. That is a sentinel event. Use of restraints or bed rails while being cared for a healthcare facility where the patient had sustained injury. Okay, so that word is missing here. So any death or injury sustained when a patient is restrained is a sentinel event. Because when you tie up someone, you are at the same time taking responsibility of their life. Correct? Legally, too. Because you cannot just tie up anybody. It is illegal. It is unlawful detention. Or you can't just tie up anyone. It is against the law. So sometimes you may have to tie up people in the hospital when they are prone for inflicting self-harm or harm to others. Okay, then we do restrain them. So there is a protocol for restraint. You cannot just go and tie up whomever you feel like. So there is a standard operating procedure where we require a medical order. We follow certain observations, document it so that the patients are safe while on restraint. Now the sixth category of sentinel events are criminal events. I hope you know that there is something known as criminal procedure code in our country, where some of the activities are classified under criminal events, and whenever a criminal event happens anywhere, the person next to it has to report to the police. If an unnatural death happens in our family, we are supposed to report to police. You cannot hide it. It is illegal. Okay, so we are supposed to follow the law in our country, right? So criminal events are such events where you may have to report even to the police. A procedure complication, you don't have to report to police, but a criminal event, yes. So examples of criminal events which can happen in a hospital is, one is impersonation. So impersonation is someone pretending to be a doctor, nurse, or pharmacist or any other licensed healthcare provider and examining a patient or doing some care to the patient. Somebody impersonating is a sentinel event. It's a criminal event. You're supposed to report to police. Abduction of a patient of any age is a criminal event. Sexual assault on a patient or anybody within the grounds of the healthcare facility is a criminal event. Death or significant injury of a patient or staff member resulting from a physical assault that occurs within the grounds of healthcare facility. So there is homicide, there is physical altercation where somebody sustained a serious injury or something. All these are reportable events. These are criminal events. This has to be reported to the police also. Okay. So these are the 6 category of adverse events. I mean, 6 category of sentinel events. Okay, so having understood what all can go wrong or seriously go wrong is what I said. There are other events, many more events. Okay, so I haven't talked about that. Okay, so just recapitulate. A wrong medication is given to the patient and patient died. Which category of event it will be? Can anyone recollect and tell me? Anyone? Anyway, you don't have to buy hard it, so don't worry even if you don't remember. It's a product related event, but you don't have to, we don't classify it that way anyways. This is just to understand it, I have this classification. Okay. Now we are going to talk a little bit of physiology of errors, if I may call it that way. Physiology of errors, or how does an error happen? Why do errors happen? How we wish errors do not happen in healthcare, right? How does the error happen? So we have to understand how things can go wrong. This is the first step to prevent, or prevent such events from happening. If we don't have this understanding, you may do anything else, it doesn't help. So there is a Swiss cheese model of accident causation. This was proposed by a person by name James Reason. Okay, I have given the source from it. So this is a widely understood and accepted model of accident causation. Now, why do we talk about so many models and theories? It is to develop better understanding. Now, if you have better understanding into any phenomena, your brain will work better. You will find better methods to prevent it. And if everyone's brain works in that direction, we can prevent so many of these such happenings. Okay, so I will explain this picture, same picture in the next slide. Okay, now look here. This is a different way of, same picture it is the Swiss cheese model of accident causation from James Reason 1997. So the accident is right in front of us there. Some explosion is shown. That is the accident. That is the sentinel event. Now, preceding this event, sentinel event, there are a lot of levels or steps the patient has undergone or we have done to the patient. So when there is weaknesses in various systems, these holes are the weaknesses. And the solid part of it is the strengths of a system, and hole is the weakness of a system. Now the theory says that when the holes line up, when they align or when they come in alignment, the danger reaches the patient and the sentinel event happens. So now this solid part of it is this Swiss cheese is defenses and holes are weaknesses. Now Swiss cheese, Swiss cheese, now what is that? Why this name? Switzerland is known for various things. Can you tell me one example what it is known for? Switzerland as a country is known for what? Anyone?
It's a beautiful country, ma'am.
It's a beautiful country, yes. You go for holiday. Other than that, what is it known for? Any idea? If you Google Swiss, you get Swiss watches, Swiss weapons. Okay, so it is third thing which comes in Google search is Swiss cheese. Okay, so it's branded for such things. Okay, so Switzerland has a lot of non-brands of watches, Tag Heuer and lot many watches. It's all Swiss made. So Swiss cheese is world famous, or Switzerland is famous for cheese. Now, what is the specialty of Swiss cheese? The cheese is, it's a milk product, right? So the quality of cheese depends on its duration of fermentation. So the best cheese in the world is centuries old. Okay, so Swiss cheese is prepared. So in that process, while the milk gets solidified, they use some ingredients which creates gases. Carbon dioxide, I guess, is the gas. And when it gets fermented, the carbon dioxide is formed and it is still getting solidified. So it has these globes of gases in the solid block of cheese. And when you slice it, where the gas globe was there, it appears on a slice as a hole. Okay, so Swiss cheese has holes in it. So what James Reason is trying to say is the defenses are there to support a weakness, which is air hole. The danger doesn't reach the patient. Understood? So the safe systems are decided or designed by covering up a weakness, which is a gas hole here, holes, by a solid part of it, which is the defense. Okay, now I'll tell you what is this defense and what is weakness. In a system like hospital, one example is new people who do not know the system, who are not familiar with our protocols, or who are not experts in their areas. Anyone, it could be anybody. So if they are not supervised by experts in the same area, the danger of non-competence may reach the patient. Okay, understood this. So we have to design safer systems. So designing safer systems is based on the understanding you have about safety. Some holes may due to active failures in a process implementation. Okay. Like say, for example, if I take an example of say a wrong patient being operated. Okay, a wrong patient reached the operation table and surgery is done on the patient. Very scary, right? The hospital may be shut down because of public outrage. The government might cancel the license if you end up such things. I mean, it has far more repercussions than what we understand if a wrong patient is operated. But it can happen in hospitals. How many examples you need? I can give you. So what is our role is to prevent such an occurrence. Okay. So if I take that as an example, why did a wrong patient get operated in the first place? Because you failed, all of us, I mean, whoever was involved in care, failed to identify a patient. Okay. So we will be, from tomorrow, we will be learning something known as National Patient Safety Goals. And first one out of National Patient Safety Goal is identifying patients correctly. That's the first National Patient Safety Goal. Okay, we'll learn in detail. There are 6-7 of them. Okay, so someone thought it is this patient, or the file was changed, somebody else's file was there, whatever. There are, when you look at hindsight, something has gone wrong. When you look back, there would be 100 reasons. So what is the remedy? If you want this error should not happen in your hospital, then we have an SOP to follow, which is known as safe surgery practices. Okay, we have that here. Every hospital has it. Now, if you do not follow that, step by step in letter and spirit, or if we cut short some of the steps, then this can happen. Imagine a wrong patient getting operated. This can happen if you do not follow the SOP correctly. Okay, so some weak people in the system or weak process in the system. Weaknesses does not mean people. It could be a weak process or that you did not even implement safe surgery in your hospital. Then that's a weakness. Or if you have implemented partially, not in the real format. I hope you have understood this slide. This is the same slide, but we are here trying to understand what are these weaknesses in the system. These are some of the weaknesses. Okay, so we can expand. You know, we can have 50 on top, 50 down, you know, on that red line. So the triggers or weaknesses, when they align with through that red tag and it reaches the patient, is adverse event. So what are these weaknesses? So these weaknesses in the system is lack of procedures. You don't have proper SOPs. You do have policies, but that focuses on punishing people around. Production pressures that you have to do this much of job in a day, which is much beyond your capability. Too much of communication gaps, mixed messages. Somebody says something, someone else says something else. You get confused. Clumsy technology, which is causing more harm than any boost to your performance. Sporadic training, here, there you train, but everyone doesn't get trained. Zero fault tolerance, that something goes wrong and everyone start firing each other. Then you're scared, then you will not report. Attention distractions, yeah, you're busy in preparing medication, 10 people call you from here, there. The medication might change. You may take wrong dose. Yeah. Deferred maintenance, yeah, maintenance does not happen on time, which is dangerous to the hospital. Okay, so these are all the holes, weaknesses. I mean, I can tell you 50 more, you know, the slide is too crowded already. And what are your strengths? Strengths are your defenses. And what are your strengths? Strengths are policies and procedures, professionalism. You deal with an event as an event and not mix with emotions, or we don't run the hospital like home. You know, professionalism, teamwork, good environment, or good facilities. Environment here means the physical facilities. Individual factors, more committed employees, diligent employees, good equipments. All these are your defenses. All these are your defenses. Or good training, good communication systems in place. You know, you have a appropriate policy and protocol, how to deal with errors, etc. You know, so many here too. This can be expanded. Okay, so if the weaknesses are covered with a defense at each level, then the probability of an adverse event reaching the patient and causing a catastrophe would be much limited, or we can eliminate. So understanding this is very important while we design systems, right? Because you will always have weaknesses in the system. As well, you will always have defenses in the system. So strengthen your defenses, identify your weaknesses, and convert that into a defense. If somebody really doesn't know how to do a procedure, they will learn eventually, right? Till they learn, somebody should supervise them. Something like that. Okay, so in a care situation, in a hospital, these are some of the factors. Okay, not all factors. I mean, 1 slide or 10 slide is not enough to list out that. Okay, so these are examples, and there might be much more than this. Okay, like say, I'll just read through that. You can read. Poorly designed facility, that is a design issue of the structure. Poorly designed processes, that of course we can relook at it and change. Equipment related issues, noisy working conditions, poor competence in task, skill, new equipment where people are not prepared enough to handle that. New area of work, you went to a new area, you don't know what is happening over there, you did not get enough orientation there. Staffing issues, inadequate staffing, incompetent staff, or maybe not bothered staff who does not react, or who lost kind of people around. They all are dangerous to the situation. Inadequate orientation, failure to communicate, exhaustion, you are tired of working, physically tired, that is exhaustion, mental exhaustion, ignorance, lack of attention, lack of equipment, memory lapse, somebody forgot, this can happen, people can forget. Technology, the technology did not work properly. Too many caregivers, that's a problem, too many of them. High acuity of illness or injury. Acuity, you understand the seriousness of the illness. Environment prone to distraction. Time pressure, need to make quick decisions. You did not have enough time to take an appropriate decision. High volume, unpredictable patient workload, high nurse-patient ratio, a number of other personal and environmental factors. There are too many factors. Okay, why does errors happen? No error happened because of one thing. Having said all these things, what is done in the hospitals? Adverse event prevention and management. Now, one is prevention, one is managing it when it happens. So prevention is that we should have a good quality assurance program in the hospital, which we have in our hospital. We have a quality assurance program whereby we have policies and protocols of doing everything in the hospital. All of us employees are supposed to follow all that. And two is identify when adverse events happen. So it has to be reported. We call it incident reporting. And investigate when something goes wrong as to what went wrong, what were the circumstances under which something went wrong, and try to identify the root cause of why something has gone wrong. And compiling all this data about error frequencies, how often it happens, and frequencies of root causes, how often these root causes are grouped together. Say inadequate communication, say for one example. Every time inadequate communication. So you have to do something about make the communication all right. Correct? Dissemination of information to redesign the systems and processes. So preventive action is always change the circumstances under which the error happened. Try to identify whether we can change the circumstances, whether the steps of the procedures was correct, can we correct it, can we do something about it, and periodic assessment of the effectiveness of risk reduction efforts using audits. So we change some process, do audit and find out what is the compliance. Compliance means the percentage adherence to a standard operating procedure steps. That is compliance. Okay, so we do measure compliance. How many people follow? Say for example, hand wash. Hand washing. All of you know hand hygiene, right? 5 moments of hand hygiene. All of you know this. I expect you to know it. 5 moments of hand hygiene. If you don't know, see WHO website. It's very clearly written there. We follow that in our hospital. And 5 moments of hand hygiene is before touching the patient or patient environment, after touching the patient environment, after touching anything which has come out of the patient's room. So all these are moments of hand hygiene. So which means that when should you follow hand hygiene? That is known as moment of hand hygiene. Okay. Now compliance means when a moment where you should have followed hand hygiene, did you actually do it? If you have done it, you are compliant. If you have not done it, you are non-compliant. Okay. So the percentage compliance means out of every 100 opportunities presented in front of a healthcare worker or healthcare workers, how many times did they avail the opportunity of hand hygiene? That is hand hygiene compliance. Okay, we do measure it. Okay, now when something goes wrong, what to do? This is corrective action. What to do? How do you handle errors? How do you manage errors? Okay, so we must avoid blame. We should provide counseling if needed, because if, say, imagine a situation, I'll share some examples from my life. One day at about 8:30, 9 o'clock, I get a call from the hospital in the evening that a patient died who was supposed to be discharged next day. Patient died from an accidental injection of a muscle relaxant, which was not supposed to be given to the patient at that time. And patient died. If you inject a Norcron or Becronium to a patient or a Scolin to a patient, the patient will die. This was around 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock was visiting time was over, so all the visitors were out from the hospital. Out from the patient's bedside. And this happened in an HDU, high dependency unit. And this was a case of asthma who had an exacerbation, COPD case. And the patient was ventilated when the patient was in medical ICU, extubated, patient was stabilized, shifted to high dependency unit. And the patient had come from the ICU. And in an effort to identify what was the patient's medication, the nurse came across medication orders are written in a particular space, right, on the right hand side in line. Okay, so nurse read all that, and she was busy, probably she had 2-3 patients, and patient came around 4 o'clock also, but soon it became 7 o'clock, handing over time. So the incoming night nurse said, did you do, she did not find anything in the medication jar. She said, where is the medications, did you give it? So this nurse said, no, I did not give. So he said, you finish your medication, then only you go, I will not take over the patient. Your leftover medication administration, I will not take over. Okay. So this nurse, yeah, she in a hurry looked at, and she identified a place where doctor had written down on the same day's note, okay, where the medications were written down. Administer this. Okay, a long list of medications. So she was trying to finish that job. So there was no muscle relaxant in that unit. We don't keep it everywhere. So she went to the adjacent nursing unit, requested, written a purchase, loan thing, and there also it's kept under lock and key. So the team leader there asked also for what. So there is a patient to be given, and I have prescription, she said. Okay, so she opened the cupboard and gave one muscle relaxant. I think it was Vicronium. And she came here, loaded it, injected it. The patient was sitting, the COPD patient, so sitting with support on a cardiac table. And the patient extended the hand and she gave it IV. And she went off from there and finished documentation, and she handed over. I finished all the medication and showed to that nurse, and she went on. Okay, so when this other nurse, she had taken over already, right? So when she came after some time to the patient was not responding. The patient was sitting dead. Time was 9 o'clock in the evening. Now, what do you do with such cases? Yeah, so the first thing what they did was pick up the phone and inform the duty supervisor. Supervisor came, that duty supervisor called me. We call duty nursing officer here, DN, in our hospital. Okay, so when she came to know, the first thing she did was call me, because it's a sentinel event. They knew about sentinel events. So yeah, so I got into my car and came in 3 minutes. I was staying nearby, so I came. So while getting into the car, I called up the CEO. So he said, "You're staying nearby. You go and let me know whether I have to come to the hospital." So, yeah. So yes, when I came here, yeah, the patient was not sitting. Of course, was made to lie down, and everyone is so lost. There is chaos in the ward. Luckily, there was no relatives, because 8 o'clock is visiting time. It was over. So in HDU, we never had any patient attendance staying back. So nobody was there. No patient attendants were there. Though, other patients did not understand so much. I don't think so. They understood it because if anything goes wrong, we draw the curtain and then they can't see what is happening inside, right? And they had finished resuscitating and declared the patient and then was informed. So I was giving, I was the senior most person in the hospital at that time, and I had to take the responsibility of handling this. I was not familiar with this kind of a situation. Okay? But however, I was communicating with CEO and he was giving me direction. So what we did was, taking the day duty people, the doctor and the nurse aside. They were still there. No, they were not there. They had gone. Why? Because the nurse handed over and went off, right? So the nurse wasn't there, the doctor was still there. And then the night nurses were there. So we said everyone to be calm and, because they are patients, full of patients in the unit, right? And then what was done is, we had to pack up the body and send to mortuary, informing the patient relatives. It was treated like any other death. As far as the relatives and the body is concerned, and this nurse in the hostel knew about it, so she came to know about it. Okay, and somebody would have called up and said, so we had to call her back. I called her back because there was a risk of she harming herself. So we have called her back. We took the nurse doctor aside. We made them sleep in the hospital for that day, and we made somebody to stand beside their rooms, and next day morning we had to take them to the psychiatrist for counseling, and then they were given leave. We were finding out their welfare all the time. And in the other side, we did a thorough root cause analysis, find out the reasons. There was obvious glaring reasons, breach of protocols. So I only had to find out that whether the nurse looked into a prescription and gave the medication. Yes, there was something in the file. Was that a prescription? Not really. What happened was the doctor was rewriting history. It was a new doctor. He was rewriting what happened in the medical ICU. So when he was rewriting, he has just copied what was written in the medical ICU progress notes. Same copied. So it was not described, the patient was ventilated in ICU for 3 days. One sentence, then it wouldn't have caused this confusion. So this was a new doctor who did not have much of an orientation. He has just copied what was the medical ICU notes. And nurse in a hurry saw that she could not comprehend that this patient does not require this medication. And neither did she knew what is a muscle relaxant. She only read Vecuronium. She asked for a Vecuronium. The other nurse in the other unit gave it, without realizing the purpose of it. And this nurse did not know what is Vecuronium all about. She had no idea it is a muscle relaxant. Okay, so this was the story. So how did we handle it? We handle so very differently than any of the hospitals in this part of the country. This happened in north of our country, and they had a good error handling mechanism in place. And we did thorough root cause analysis, as I said. The entire writing by the doctors was put to scrutiny and necessary changes were made so that no nurse will read a medical order in a wrong fashion. We have SOPs and standards for all these things, but we either disregard it or misunderstand it and follow it in some different way is one of the reasons why things go wrong. What's the point in punishing somebody? So what we have to understand, what we have to think about is that no one goes to work intending to make a mistake. Nobody comes to any hospital thinking that I should give a wrong medication and kill a patient. Nobody will think like that. I have absolutely no doubt in this. And also, once a mistake happens, once an error happens, the healthcare worker feels tremendous guilt after the event that harms the patient. They feel responsible. They feel guilty of harming a person. That's terrible to go through that, and we need to help each other when this happens. So this is what I have learned from that event. We of course had protocols which were decent to prevent errors. So preventing adverse events is what is patient safety is all about. This is a very basic requirement of running a hospital. And this is divided into different activities in the hospital. Few of it is there on your screen, few of it. Okay, this is not the whole thing. There are many more things to it. So medication safety, surgical safety, prevention of infection, risk management, transportation safety, radiation safety, communication safety, environmental safety, electrical safety, fire safety, prevention of falls. So all these are part of it. There are many more. Okay, this not. I mean, I didn't have place in this slide to add more. So now we talk about what are national patient safety goals. So that is there on your screen, 6 of them. National patient safety goals. I said first one is identify patients, correct? Second is improve effective communication. So in the coming days, you will learn about each of these things. 3 is improve the safety of high alert medications. You will learn what it is and how do we take care of high alert medications, eliminate wrong site, wrong patient, wrong procedure, surgery, reduce the risk of healthcare acquired infections, and reduce the risk of patient harm resulting from falls. So these are 6 national patient safety goals which you are going to study, and this is already implemented here. So you will have to learn about this and how we prevent errors from this. Okay, so there are some barriers to patient safety as well in the hospital. Yeah, but barriers to patient safety is when a healthcare worker feels very weak and insignificant. And there are a lot of reasons. I have references to all these: perceived lack of authority by various healthcare workers, interpersonal issues, fights. I don't like that one type. Prior bad experiences, lack of support from the administration, lack of consensus on definition of error. Say, doctor say not to report, oh, please don't report this. This is not an error. This is a complication of the disease. Then matter goes. So that way. So all these are barriers to patient safety in a hospital. So who is responsible for patient safety in a hospital? You can say every employee. Yeah, every employee definitely is responsible. But I would say that the leadership is responsible for patient safety in a hospital. And if leadership is responsible, everyone else is responsible. Every employee is responsible. Proactive system design. So by which you may learn about all these things much more in detail later. So proactive system design means that you eliminate the possibility of making an error from the system. I'll tell you a simple example. Time is so I have overshooted the time, but then I must share this example. All of you use credit card or debit card, right? So earlier when these, cards came in existence, what used to happen is you put the credit card in the ATM machine or a debit card, and you key in the data and you got the money. Seeing the money, you become happy, and you take the money, count it, and walk off from there, leaving the card over there. Okay, so this used to happen very often. Everyone used to forget, and the banks were fed up with complaints, and their time, a lot of time was wasted in handling. I forgot my card over there. Now I am not finding it. To block the card, reissue the card, a lot of it. Okay, then banks, somebody came with this idea of now how it happens. All of you know this. You insert the card, you key in the details, and either the machine tells you, please take your card. Till you take the card, it keeps screaming, please take your card, right? Or else in between a technique came where it is prompted, you take your card, then only money will come. That was best, I guess. Then there was some technical problem. Somebody was copying the data, and so again it is like now the machine says, the ATM machine says, please take your card. Okay, so there is no possibility of leaving the card over there. So likewise, system re-engineering is what is recommended today, whereby you make the environment safer, whereby there is no possibility of ending up in an error. Training, orientation, communication, all these are very, very important. Yeah, this slide I wouldn't go in detail because this is a little bit too much for you probably to understand. So everybody has a role in patient safety. That's what you got to understand. And you as beginners in the profession, what you have to understand is learn the psychology of errors. Then you will understand why errors happen and how to prevent it. Okay, everybody has a role, more so you have a role because you are the ones who are going to take care of patients. And if you follow all the SOPs, you will prevent errors to a larger extent. Number two, when in doubt, call someone. When in doubt, take help, so that the person whom you take help also shares the responsibility. So patient care is not any one person's responsibility. It is everybody's responsibility. So it is a teamwork. So in teamwork, you have to communicate, you have to escalate. When in doubt, please take help. This is what, but you must have doubt. You must have doubt. Okay, there is no question. You do not have doubt, then you are blocking an opportunity to correct it and preventing an error from happening. Okay, so this is what right now you have to do, that ensure, be 100% sure that you are doing the right thing. If something goes wrong around you, please escalate it. Even if your closest friend is doing something which is not in alignment with the patient safety, please report about it. Thereby reporting, you are helping that person. Okay, and of course, the institution also should have a culture which strengthens the patient safety. Okay, this is what I was talking about, system re-engineering. So we have to be transparent, truthful to each other. We have to trust each other. And we have to eliminate non-productive activities. We have to remove clutter from our environment. Too many works, too many distractions, all these can predispose to errors. And cooperation from the clinicians is absolutely necessary for this. Okay, so a few things in conclusion which I would like to reiterate is your personal commitment to do the right thing at all times. Be proactive to prevent errors by reporting. Proactive is anticipating something can go wrong and report about it much earlier so that somebody can intervene and prevent an adverse event from happening. That is what is known as proactiveness. It is one of the most important quality of a nurse, is being proactive. Set an example to help raise others' awareness of safety hazards and involve the patient and family, last but not the least. We involve patient and family in all activities, all procedures, all decision making. To a larger extent, we can have patient safety in our hospital. Okay, so before concluding, I would have one more video.
Papa, can we play outside?
No,
Why?
because it's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's too early.
Why?
The sun hasn't come up yet.
Why?
Because the sun comes up later.
Why?
Well, the Earth goes around, and when it turns a certain amount, the sun shows on the horizon.
Why?
I don't know.
Why? Why don't you know, Papa?
Because I didn't pay attention in school, okay? I didn't listen in class.
Why?
Because I was high all the time. smoke too much pot.
Why?
I didn't think it would matter.
Why?
I just figured my life would come together on its own. Then I met your mom. You came along. So now I work at the muffler shop. Well, it's too late for me to pursue a career now. Since your mom has a job with benefits, I stay home and I take care of you. Because what I make is pretty much just a joke.
Why?
Well, the service economy replaced manufacturing. There's no real jobs in America anymore.
Why?
We had good jobs for a while, but it's just we were lucky and now we're unlucky.
Why?
It's just the way it goes.
Why?
Because God's dead and we're alone.
Okay.
I don't know whether you could really understand the crux of it. It's a father-daughter duo, and the father is saying so many stupid answers, but the girl is determined to get some answers from him, and she is, approaching it with an inquisitive mind, which is very peculiar to the child, right? So while dealing with errors, what we need to have is similar mindset where you should go on asking why till you get a satisfactory answer. When anything goes wrong, if you ask a series of why did it happen, and not really who was there or who made it happen, you will find the process will be much better, and we will be able to change the situations under which the errors happen. And that is what is going to save us errors from happening. And if you have seen the last slide, yeah, teamwork is very important. If communication is not adequate or appropriate enough, you may do your best. The two teams which was building the railway track were doing their best. They made the track. But in that track, you cannot take a train alone, right? Because they did not have enough communication and they made the track not in the right direction. Direction was right, but somewhere something went wrong, right? So very important, probably most important is appropriate communication, which can prevent the errors from happening. Thank you. I am done. If you have any questions, you can ask. For us, I am sure all of you would be feeling hungry. So we'll wind up. 5 minutes for questions, if anybody has. Come on the screen, please. I'm sure many of you would have finished lunch also by now. Come on screen, please. Some of you at least. Let me see you. Yeah, let me see whether you're alive out there. When you have slide, you can't really see you, and I wish to have you and then the slide, but that's not possible in Zoom. So any questions anybody has about the patient safety? This is just an introductory thing, okay? Was it too heavy? Nobody's asking anything. Any questions? Yeah, Divya, you have something? Divya Thomas?
No, ma'am. I was telling no.
No. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? I want you to ask some questions, then only I'll wind up this. the meantime, maybe we can stop the recording. Okay, thank you all so much. I'll stop the recording here, then we can have our discussion. Okay.